Nowadays, video games are constantly changing. The classes and skills that were overpowered on Monday may be nerfed into oblivion on Tuesday. While Square Enix and the development team behind Final Fantasy XIV is usually subtler with their balance changes, that doesn't mean they don't make a difference. Today, we're going to look through some of the 4.05 balance changes for the warrior and the tanks. The first change made in patch 4.05 affects all the tanks, and it was made to fending accessories. They originally had vitality and secondary stats on them, which meant as you upgraded your gear, you saw a slight increase to your health, but a much more insignificant increase to your damage. With fending accessories now coming equipped with strength, vitality, and secondary stats, when you upgrade your bling, you'll see a slightly bigger change in your damage as well. This is a great change, but it's not one that everyone is happy with because the rate at which you gain strength on tanking accessories is not the same as the rate you gain strength or intelligence or dexterity on damage dealing accessories. In other words, when the damage dealers upgrade their accessories, their damage increases by a larger percent than the tanks, which means eventually the world is going to explode. Look, if it ever gets to a point where you're struggling to maintain threat on a boss, use your threat generating combo. I do understand that the threat generating combos for the tanks do not deal as much damage as their other combos, but I think that's the point. Now on to the warrior specific changes. First up, Steel Cyclone now heals for a portion of the damage dealt, and that change is equal parts fun and practical. In patch 4.0, Paladin and Dark Knight lost access to the cross-class skill Bloodbath, and warriors no longer have it as part of their base kit. In the case of the warrior and Dark Knight, they lost some self-sustain. But for the warrior specifically, they gained a lot for their cross-class skills that more than makes up for it. Rampart is infinitely better than Bloodbath because it allows you to mitigate damage, and that's what you want as a tank. The self-sustain is great, but if a tank buster's coming at your face and it's going to deal 70,000 damage and you only have 70,000 life and you activate Bloodbath, you're going to die. But if you activate Rampart, it's going to get reduced by 20%. I'm not doing the math. Bottom line is you're not going to die when you activate Rampart. But with all of that said, it is a lot of fun to heal yourself in combat, and Steel Cyclone brings back some of that fun factor to Warrior while also giving you some extra self-sustain in very large dungeon pulls. The next change to the Warrior removed the 20 beast gauge cost from Unchained and Inner Release. This is a nice quality of life change for Unchained, but it is a huge change for Inner Release. When you activate Inner Release, you are supposed to explode with your beast gauge actions while they're under the effect of the reduced cost. Before patch 4.05, it was common practice to activate Inner Release, then immediately build your beast gauge back to 100, and there is still a portion of your Inner Release cooldown where you're building your beast gauge back, but you start off with a Fell Cleave this time, so it feels a little bit better. It just feels better, guys. I don't know how to explain it. I'm rubbing my fingers together a lot to try and explain that there's a feeling that is different about Inner Release now that it doesn't cost beast gauge. But besides feeling better, it is an actual buff to the ability, so you should be very happy about that. The final change to the warrior is the most exciting of all of them. The potency of Storm's Path was increased to 270 up from 250. I'm kidding, that's not the most exciting change. The beast gauge is no longer reduced by 50% when you switch from Deliverance to Defiance or vice versa. This is the largest quality of life change that could have been made to the warrior. It makes stance dancing a lot simpler. In the new system that was created with Stormblood, if you wanted to stance dance, you had to do a little bit of napkin math or else you'd end up with a very awkward 5 in your beast gauge. Simply put, this change makes things easier. Instead of switching only at specific intervals of your beast gauge, you can switch whenever you want. But that doesn't mean it's always a good time to switch. The clip that's on screen now is an example of a switch to Deliverance that almost left me dead. But it was pretty exhilarating, so I think it was worth it in the end. With that said, weighing the pros and cons of offense versus defense is what makes the warrior a unique tanking class. Its entire kit is designed around making sacrifices. If you go for more damage, you lose out on defense. If you use Fell Cleave, you can't use Inner Beast until you build up the beast gauge again. Because there's no stance swapping penalty, you can engage in that thought process more readily. In a previous video, I mentioned liking the reduction in beast gauge cost when switching between Defiance and Deliverance, and I still think that is a good concept, and it was one that I hoped that Square Enix would expand upon, but instead they gave us the old system back, and I'm perfectly okay with that because the old system worked really well. So, those are all the changes that were made to the warrior in patch 4.05, but there is still a question that I'm sure is burning in the back of everyone's minds. Is there a reason to bring a warrior to a raid? Yes, they are incredibly powerful tanks with a suite of cooldowns that they can continuously rotate throughout a fight, all while having mitigation still available for the heavy-hitting tank busters. They can also significantly increase their damage without switching out of their tank stance, courtesy of Unchained. Even though Unchained isn't as potent as Inner Release and they share a cooldown, Unchained allows you to increase your damage output while retaining all of the defensive capabilities of your tank stance, and that is a good thing in my book. But that's just my opinion on the matter. I'm sure if you have a different one about the state of raiding and why it's completely useless to bring a warrior, you will let me know in the comments below. On that note, we're going to wrap it up here. The name of the game is Final Fantasy XIV. The name of the channel is iBluairJgR Gaming for Comedy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, leave a comment. Let me know how you feel about the warrior changes as well. And also, don't forget to tell me something nice because I'm hungry for some compliments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.